I think I kind of had to pause for a minute and say, this is a huge deal. Like, if this is true, this is a huge deal.
Cheer star Jerry Harris, the 21-year-old, is behind bars this morning as he is facing allegations of producing child pornography.
Cheer was a huge success. The show was the most popular show on Netflix. The athletes on the show were gracing red carpets on stage with Oprah. Jerry Harris did the red carpet for the Ellen DeGeneres show.
You are Jerry.
Yeah. Come on, Jerry.
You're awesome.
What everyone is seeing of Jerry Harris from the outside view, from social media, is a completely different person from when you actually know him.
Charlie and Sam told me that it had started when they were 13 and Jerry was 19 and continued for more than a year afterward. It was really difficult for people to reconcile the persona that Jerry Harris had as this gregarious, kind, and exciting person from the show.
A new USA Today investigation uncovers nearly 180 individuals affiliated with cheerleading who have faced charges involving misconduct with minors but weren't actually banned by the sport.
My name is Marissa Kwiatkowski, and I'm an investigative reporter for USA Today.
More than 160 women say Larry Nassar sexually abused them. It's one of the worst sexual abuse scandals in the history of sports.
In the wake of the reporting that my colleagues and I did into USA Gymnastics and Dr. Larry Nassar, I heard from someone who reached out and said, you really should look at what's happening in the world of cheerleading.
My name is Trisha Nadolny, and I'm an investigative reporter at USA Today.
Cheerleading is a massive industry. It spans 5-year-olds cheering on the side of football games, to collegiate teams, to high-pressure competitions, going into adulthood. The last estimates were more than 3.7 million people involved in the sport of cheer. I received a dump of documents that included information about not only what was happening in the sport, but the structure of the sport.
One of the first things that we did was we pulled up the lists of people who had been banned from participating in cheer.
And it was a very, very small list.
There were only 21 names on those two lists. That really just kind of struck both of us as odd.
And so we started doing our own digging to find out how many people connected to the sport had been accused or convicted of misconduct involving minors.
We looked at news archives. We, started with Google and found local stories all over the country, touching on this issue.
We searched sex offender registries to compare the lists of individuals that we had with the people who had been convicted.
We went deeper, and some of the stories we were looking at were decades old.
Our investigation found more than 180 individuals who had been accused of misconduct, who had been connected to cheerleading but not banned by the sport. And 74 of those people were actually convicted sex offenders.
There were high school cheerleading coaches who had been arrested for having relationships with athletes on their teams. There were choreographers, people who owned gyms, and music producers in the cheerleading world. These were people who were not listed by the governing body as being suspended or banned, and so it made us wonder, could these people just walk into a gym today and get a job?
In the course of our investigation, we continued to gather information about the people accused of misconduct, and we found a number of things relating to the governing bodies.
USASF had basically this loophole in their policies. You could work at a cheerleading gym, you could have contact with athletes every day and not have to be a member of the US All-Star Federation unless you wanted to accompany your team backstage. The U.S. All-Star Federation is a hugely powerful entity in the world of cheerleading. We found that they didn't really have super strict policies when it came for how to handle sexual misconduct in their gyms. They really were leaving a lot of it up to the gym owners.
So at the time that we were doing our investigation into misconduct in cheerleading, there was a lot of attention being paid to the sport, in part because of the Netflix docuseries Cheer that followed collegiate teams on their pathway to a competition.
Now, I had watched Cheer. Marissa had not. I was a fan. I binged it, over a couple of weeks and really enjoyed the show. Like most people, I really enjoyed watching Jerry Harris. He was clearly the standout star.
So the fact that some people came over and talked to you was a big deal because they love you.
Marissa says to me, someone from Cheer has been accused of sexual misconduct. And I asked her who, and she said Jerry Harris. I think I kind of had to pause for a minute and say, this is a huge deal. Like, if this is true, this is a huge deal. We very quickly started moving forward with telling that story.
I connected with a mother and twin sons who described a pattern of sexual misconduct by Jerry Harris that spanned his time before appearing on the series Cheer, as well as continuing afterward. Charlie and Sam told me that it had started when they were 13 and Jerry was 19 and continued for more than a year afterward.
My first indication that there was something going on was I found a series of text messages on Charlie's phone with Jerry Harris. That caused me to sort of delve deeper with Charlie and look in his Snapchat and things like that and see that it was more than just text messages.
Jerry Harris was accused of soliciting nude photos and sex from minors, both Sam and Charlie, as well as other minors who were connected to the sport.
Jerry would send me photos and videos of himself.
Jerry Harris was a huge star, and his stardom was only growing at this point. And what we heard from Sam and Charlie was that Jerry had actually used that celebrity to pressure them and coerce them into sending him inappropriate photos.
By the time that I interviewed Kristen and the boys, they were incredibly frustrated.
One of the things that Kristen told us was that she had reported these allegations to the U.S. All-Star Federation. She went to them first in May of 2020 and again in July of 2020 to say what Jerry had done to her sons. But the U.S. All-Star Federation did not act on that information.
I made the report about Jerry Harris, and that was in early May. And I guess I just made the assumption that somebody with USASF was doing something about the Jerry Harris stuff, because I did receive a confirmation that they had received my report back in May, but I didn't hear anything else from them until early July.
Jerry Harris had not yet been banned by the organization. And so there was a lot of frustration. They wanted to protect other people connected to the sport, and they hoped by sharing their own stories, they would be able to do so.
The U.S. All-Star Federation has told us that they made sure that the allegations had been reported to police, which they had, and they were waiting on law enforcement to act. But we haven't found any evidence that police were actually looking into these allegations during that time.
There was nobody that had my back in this situation. I was really the only person that was looking out for my kids.
And so in July, she reached out to the FBI as well as local law enforcement in the hopes of sharing what had happened.
I would not be putting myself out there and doing all this stuff and literally losing my friends about this for no reason.
When you're asking someone to trust you with what basically is the worst thing that's ever happened to them, there's a lot of responsibility that comes along with that. Jerry Harris was ultimately only suspended by the U.S. All-Star Federation in September, on the day that we published our investigation into him.
Jerry Harris was arrested and criminally charged in September of 2020, facing multiple counts relating to his conduct with minors.
He ultimately pled guilty in February of this year.
He admitted to receiving child pornography as well as to crossing state lines with the intent to have sexual relations with a minor. At the time that we started our investigation, just 21 people in total had been banned by the sport's two governing bodies. Today, those lists have been combined, and there are now more than 200 people who have been banned by the organization.
You know, sadly, I think we find this in a lot of sports, but at the end of the day, it has to be a safe space for athletes.